Hello, and welcome to the Techstrong AI podcast. I'm Amanda Razani, and with me today I have James Raybould. He's the head of Turing Intelligence at Turing. How are you doing today?
I am fantastic. Thank you for having me.
Happy to have you on the show. So can you share a little bit about Turing and what services do you provide?
Absolutely. So for those of you who aren't familiar, Turing is a AGI infrastructure company that does two major things. One, we work with the large frontier models, OpenAI's, Anthropic's, Gemini's of the world to help advance all their models and help push AI forward. So advancing it. Then two, and what my business is, how do you then help deploy it? So we now work with a Fortune 500 company and say, hey, all these advancements in LLMs or agentic flows or all the different things that these amazing companies are creating, what do we now do to deploy that to make your company more effective? Maybe it's supply chain, maybe it's demand forecasting, maybe it's agentic this or that. And so basically, all this amazing technology over here, how do we bring it to you to make your company more successful?
Wonderful. All right. Well, our topic for today is implementing AI tools and finding that value and return on investment. So, from your experience, where are companies falling short where they are not seeing this return on investment? Where's the critical errors that are being made?
I think that the biggest one right now is I bought ChatGPT for everyone, or I bought Anthropic for everyone. I bought enterprise versions of one of these products, and I've now have an AI strategy. And they're like, oh, cool. I gave it to my people. Now I'm an AI company. And that's not really how it works. And so I think there's two major gaps. One is the leadership bought in to then drive all the adoption. Then two, some of the power of AI is definitely going to be bottom up, where I as an individual, you're preparing to meet with me, you can do some research faster, I can write my blog post faster, I can do things faster. That's definitely true. But that's the kind of what I'll call the bottom up version. The tops down version, the workflow version, is there are all these flows we have in our companies, invoice processing, all these different flows. It could be encoding, whatever it might be, where there's just a lot of manual work. And so I think it's what companies need to figure out is like, which flows are better off being done by AI or through automation. And for those, rather than just giving people better tools, you should have the tool do most of the work, and the people, the quote human in the loop, can come in and make sure that the LLM or the agent is doing it well. So I'm not saying yet everything is kind of completely handed off to AI. We're not there yet in most areas, but I gave my people the tool, they can now go, fish. I gave them a rod, they can go fish. Doesn't really work. There's a lot of change management. There's also a lot of like, how do I make sure the flows I'm giving my team are AI powered or AI forward, and then they can be much more effective. And so I think yeah, you have ChatGPT, you're AI, right? That's not how, AI, by the way, ChatGPT is fantastic, but it's like, necessary but not sufficient is the way I would think about it.
Mhm. So, what tips do you have for business leaders to ensure good communication and proper training of how to use these AI tools and how to implement them properly?
I think it starts with, what is the business objective? And so, if I think about, I'll start with my job, because then we can think about, how that would work. For Turing, Turing's job is to build a thriving business, again, helping whether it's the AI models themselves or the companies deploying AI. So we have business problems, and then we're trying to figure out internally, how do we now code more effectively? Okay, great. That's where a windsurf or a cursor or with different solutions we use there might be helpful. Or we're trying to figure out how to do ticketing internally for, HR issues. Great. We've built a bunch of agentic flows there. And so again, I think the biggest thing is, I guess to your earlier question, like either I've given you AI, now you're done, or start with the AI. AI is cool. You should use it, versus like, what's the business problem I'm trying to solve? What is the workflow I'm already doing? And then how do I do that, faster, cheaper, better, or more of it? By the way, what's interesting about AI now is, where you couldn't necessarily scan every email or have every single person get the same customer experience. Now with AI, you can all get a personalized experience. It used to be, you had to be a very high value customer to get to talk to some concierge and get kind of personalized experience. With AI, everyone can. And so this whole idea of the connection between what is happening, like obviously we had Turing C on the frontier models front, back to what is the business problem you have? And that could be at a CEO level or CXO level where you understand what the business problem is, but then like how do these technologies over here make this business problem over here work better? So I think kind of, yeah, either giving it to bottoms up or saying, please just use AI. But I don't know why I'm using AI. So again, the biggest thing is, I haven't changed my flows. I don't do different things necessarily because of AI. I do the same things that I would have done before, way, way better. Or of course, I use AI to outsource some of these things. But the business problem we all have, I'm trying to build a business. You're trying to build a business. We're all trying to build business. We're all trying to drive organizational change, whatever it might be. Start there and then move to how does AI accelerate that? What does the AI forward version of that look like? Not here's the tool. Going inside out from technology out to use cases doesn't work as well as what are the use cases back to technology.
So, from your experience, or Turing's experience working with some companies, can you give some actual use cases or some examples of successful um, AI adoption?
Yeah, for sure. So I think there's a bunch of use cases around auditing, whether that auditing could be for insurance companies, whether that's or medical auditing, where there's a lot of this information coming through, whether it's a claims or it's a here's a could be car insurance, it could be medical insurance, whatever. And so we have all this volume information where most of the information is coming through is going to be in text format, somewhat structured, but not always that structured. And so what's happening right now is I, as a reviewer, as a human reviewer, need to go through and check all these things. Or maybe it's similarly back to your question around like invoice processing. We all know what invoices look like. We all have purchase orders. Well, but they all look a little different. So humans have spent all this time looking through and like making sure this is in the right place and connecting this piece of information here to this piece of information here. What AI can do, and we're seeing with our clients, is it takes these processes that are extremely manual and not particularly skilled, not like low skill, but not high skill either, and says, I can get you a 95% as good version in, seconds that might have taken a human minutes or even hours. And then again, back to that point earlier, human in the loop is very important. Over time, AI may reach the point where it's, quote, better than humans, where actually, the AI solution is consistently better than humans. And I don't need to have a human in the loop. We're not there yet, in the most part, especially when when things get complicated. And so right now it's more like AI says, I think this is the answer. And the human says, yes, that's correct. And it takes him or her 5 seconds when before it might have taken him or her, 5 minutes or potentially even into hours, depending on how complex the document might be. And so I think the companies that can identify, here are the use cases of my company that are repeatable, probably could be low skill, could be medium skill. Over time, it could be high skill too. And then figuring out for these use cases, how much of this requires real human nuance? How much is more like, if I have a really powerful system, I can get to either a good enough or a better version. Again, that's where I think the curve is so important, because today, again, human in the loop is going to be the main thing. In a year or two, as these frontier models we work with closely get better and better and better, the bar where humans need to get involved will keep moving up and up and up, which to a point where for some of these flows, the AI answer will be better than the human answer would be.
So, what advice do you have for how business leaders can actually track their AI investments and determine if they've received the value they were expecting?
I think kind of like you would. So, imagine we're having this conversation pre-AI, and you'd say, we're thinking of buying this new tool, this new software, or we're hiring a consulting firm to do some work. They're going to figure out that we believe this problem is yay big. Maybe we think there's revenue and growth over here or cost savings over here. We think it could be X. It's the same math of people making ROI decisions for a long time. Now the only difference is the tool you're buying is an AI tool, or the service you're buying, kind of like Turing, is an AI-enabled service. but it's not a new muscle of, you and I make decisions all the time. Is this worthy of my spend? Whether it's, as a human, as a consumer, should I buy this car or this phone, or as a business person, should I buy this piece of software or even hire this person for this role? We spend our whole, days at work making ROI decisions, whether it's ROI for spend or how we spend our time. AI doesn't change that. Again, it comes back to the business problems don't change. It's which business problems can AI help you solve? And therefore, if I believe it can help me solve the problem, how big was the problem? And therefore, how much money is it worth my investing in solving that problem?
Do you think that companies still struggle from employees using their own AI tools outside of company provided tools? And is there an issue there as far as security?
Yes, that definitely happens. I do think, back to the earlier point, OpenAI and Anthropic and others have, built pretty large businesses pretty quickly on both, obviously, the consumer side, like you mentioned, and the enterprise side. So I think, increasingly more and more companies are realizing, I want all my employees to have access to these incredible tools. Therefore, I'm going to purchase ChatGPT for the most part for my employees. And obviously, they're going to encourage their employees to build custom GPTs. There is still, exactly to your point, some employees who are like, oh, I prefer Gemini, and the company hasn't bought Gemini because we're an Azure shop, or we're in a Microsoft Office shop, and therefore I'm going to keep using Gemini, and that's potentially a problem. And I think over time, though, more, I can't, how everyone today has a seat of Microsoft Office or a seat of, G Suite or Google, Google's products, etc. I just don't think there's a world in a couple of years where every single employee doesn't have access to these tools because they're so powerful. And therefore, I think the risk doesn't disappear, because again, it could be, again, I'm a Microsoft Office shop, but I prefer Claude, but it at least minimizes. And so, uh, that's something that we're seeing, much more adoption of the enterprise products. Obviously, that's where they come in, that they first buy the core product. Now they come to us, so they come to companies like us and say, great, we've now invested in this kind of foundational layer of, at the user level. How do we now automate the workflows on top of that to make that kind of the base layer more powerful?
All right. So let's look toward the future. So, a couple of years from now, as rapidly as AI is advancing, what do you envision as far as AI in the enterprise?
I think it'll become just much more native. And so I think you think about mobile. I remember, I was at LinkedIn for a long time before I was at Turing. And I remember in the early days of mobile, 2011, 2012, 2013, we had a mobile team. So, everyone's like, oh, what's your mobile strategy? No one in 2025 has a mobile strategy, if that makes sense. They just have a company strategy. And so I think, to your question, right now in 2025, in the next few years, companies definitely need to have an AI strategy, and people have, AI transformation leaders or head of AI strategy, etc. That's going to go away, and the best business leaders will just be the best business leaders. And that, obviously, you won't be a great business leader in 2026 or 2027 or 2030 if you don't speak fluent AI, in the same way you couldn't have been a great product leader at a Google or a Facebook or a LinkedIn or whatever if you didn't speak fluent mobile. And so I think it's one of those things where it just becomes, we stop thinking about it as AI, and we start thinking about it as like, oh, now I have capabilities that can do these incredible things. And that's where, companies obviously come to us, because we're, in 10 years time, maybe AI is like a core thing. Today, it's so new and it's so innovative that our ability to work with the OpenAIs, Anthropics of the world to see where the future is going means we can now kind of look around corners and figure out, okay, great, we know where the future is going on the technology side. For you, that means there are opportunities to drive revenues over here, increase customer satisfaction over here, reduce costs over there. And so it's very, very exciting, to be in this space. And again, the space will, quote, go away as it just becomes part of like what we're all used to.
All right. Well, if there was one key takeaway you could leave our audience with today, what would that be?
I think it's just start with the business problem. Starting with the AI and trying to figure out how to use it, to me, is never as helpful as start with whatever the problem is. Again, whether it's a CXO trying to solve his or her most important problem, or you as an individual making your day more productive. Start with what are your user flows? What are you trying to do? What's the job you're trying to accomplish? And then given that, how do I use, whether it's a off-the-shelf product like a ChatGPT or a Claude, or increasingly as companies rely on companies like Turing to build these more automated workflows, how can those workflows be powered by AI to make it, faster, cheaper, better, et cetera?
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your insights with us.
Of course.
And thank you to our audience. Stay tuned. There's more.